Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is the long-awaited third installment of the Guardians of the Galaxy series, which is by far the best thing Marvel has ever made. Guardians of the Galaxy was a fun, fresh, instant classic adventure with some of the most memorable characters of the 2010s. The sequel to the first film in the trilogy was somewhat of a disappointment compared to Guardians 1, but realistically it could never live up to its predecessor. So it seemed that that was the reason people weren't really jumping out of their seats to watch this third movie, but for me there's a different reason. When Guardians of the Galaxy first came out, it was somewhat of a magical experience. It was a hilarious, lighthearted, and clever comedy action film, but after that film reached its ridiculous height in popularity to the point where even people who hated Marvel really enjoyed that film, Marvel has tried so desperately to recreate the magic from the first Guardians of the Galaxy film that every Marvel movie now has funny, self-aware, and fun moments, even in their much darker movies that really don't need it. Now, this is important to be put into consideration for two reasons. One being that it's literally impossible for Marvel to make just another silly, fun space adventure and expect it to be even half as popular as the first two, due to how tired the formula is at this point. Two being that this is exactly what makes this movie kind of a mess, because they didn't want to make another laid-back adventure movie, meaning that this one was inherently going to be darker, and this is where the problem lies. Several moments in this film almost made me cry due to the intense Rocket Raccoon backstory, but this mixed in with the same cheeky silliness going on constantly was really out of place. The plot revolves mostly around saving and protecting Rocket, yet the characters still have the same tone as the first film. In some scenes, they are just pissed off and ready to fight for their friend's life, and in other scenes, they're just screwing around unnecessarily. Now, the tone is not the only problem I have here. The film has some really bad scenes as well. One scene that is featured in the trailer, where they visit a planet with all the animal people, is pretty lame. The CGI of the animal people is pretty horrendous, which is weird considering there is some impressive CGI earlier in the film with Rocket and his friends. The scene itself also just features a lot of sloppy writing. They take about 10 minutes doing absolutely nothing, and it is really aggravating given the high stakes of the film. The Warlock was just completely unnecessary. After the end credit scene in Volume 2 featuring Will Poulter as the Warlock, I was really excited given that he is such a great up-and-coming actor, but they really just threw him in here. It's almost like they delayed Guardians 3 so much and they forgot to put him in Endgame, so he was kind of just in the background of this film. In fact, that was the big problem with this movie. There was just too much going on. Let me try to tell you every single box Marvel tried to check in this film. 1. Peter needs to come to terms with the Gamora he knew being gone forever. 2. Rocket's entire backstory needs to be covered. 3. Character development for Kraglin. 4. At least 10 popular nostalgic songs for most ages watching. 5. Peter needs to meet his grandfather. 6. Rocket needs to confront his creator. 7. Drax needs to be appreciated by Nebula. 8. Mantis needs to go on a quest of self-journey. 9. Cosmo needs to show his powers. 10. Kraglin needs to learn how to use the whistling arrow. 11. The Warlock needs to be dealt with. And I'll stop there because I think you get the gist of it. There are just so many events that need to be resolved, and they are essentially all fixed by the end, but it just gets tiresome and feels like we are knocking things off a checklist by the last 10 minutes. The songs are also overbearing in this film, where there is basically a new one every other scene. Even if the songs themselves are great, they usually don't even fit what the scene is going for very well, and occur way too often. No Sleep Till Brooklyn specifically was an awful choice to be the pump-up song, given that I could think of at least 10 other Beastie Boys songs alone that are so much better. There definitely were some aspects that I liked. First off, some of the cinematography was pretty stellar. In one scene where a character is beating the crap out of another character, there was some really unsettling imagery and strange editing that I think definitely worked and was very powerful. Many of the tear-jerking scenes were effective. When one character gets shot abruptly, my heart literally dropped, and the way it was revealed was very interesting. The lab-tested animals were a necessary part of the story, even if the tone wasn't always consistent. I really loved how dark they were willing to go with a Marvel movie. The theme of needing to stop running from something you have been running from your whole life was a new theme for Marvel and worked for multiple characters. The Warlock, while mostly unnecessary, was performed well and added some comedy to many scenes. Speaking of the humor, it was quite on point here. I was expecting it to be less impactful as the first two, given the dark tone and higher stakes, but the jokes kept rolling in, and I was smiling just as much as I was crying. There were still great scenes of humor, and the whole plotline where they go to the health center planet was a lot of fun. Sure, there were some scenes that dragged on, or some jokes that didn't land very well, like Cosmo needing to be called a good dog, but overall, it was a good experience, and I'd say this is a better film than the second due to how many more risks this film took and how most of them succeeded. Yet, this film could have been better, and it is not quite the film that the first Guardians was. This movie isn't breaking any barriers of filmmaking, it is still a Marvel movie, but it really didn't need to. At times, it was making me cry, and at others, it was making me laugh, and while it is a mess, it's a really good mess. And I'm feeling a decent to strong 7 on this film. I would suggest checking it out if you like the first two Guardians films. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.